Good evening. All right, we're about to get started with our meeting, with our town hall. Mayor Lumumba and the administration are here and ready to receive what it is that you might have for them. At this time, we're going to ask our city administrator, Louis Wright, to come and offer us a word of prayer.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. Let us go to the Lord in prayer. Our God and our Father, we thank you for this day, and we thank you for the many blessings that you have given to us. We thank you for this opportunity that we've come to just to hear and listen to things that are going on within our city. We thank you for these administrators. We thank you for this mayor, and we thank you for the citizens of this city. And we pray, Lord, that everything will be done to your glory and to your honor. It is in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Okay, so how many residents of individual neighborhoods do we have here? Can you raise your hands, please? All right, I see some South Jackson residents. Oh, so good to see you. So, I'm sorry? All right, so these meetings that we have are intended for us to be able to introduce the city government to you as community residents of Jackson. It's intended for you to be open and honest with whatever concerns you might have. The mayor is going to answer any questions that you might have, and his staff, the representatives from individual departments, are here for you to meet and talk to. So at this time, let us receive Mayor Lumumba, and he will give his opening statements, and then we will go into the question and answer session. Hey, let's give him a hand.
I got it, I'll be all right. Good evening. Try one more time. Good evening. It is a pleasure to be here with you today. I enjoy most the opportunity to engage with residents, to not only inform you as to what your government is doing for you and what we have, what we're working on and what our challenges that we see internally, but we also see you as a vital component to that work, not only understanding or speaking to you about what your concerns are, but you being the eyes and ears of what you're seeing on your block, in your community, in your neighborhood, and through our collective genius, our collective understanding, we believe that that leads us into a better position to come up with the solutions to our problems collectively. So I'm grateful to be here. One housekeeping matter, I just want to tell 16 and 12, I'll try my best to stay right here for your microphones, but I am a mover, so I might walk around a little bit as people ask questions and as we get into this discussion. But ultimately, I want to scratch where you might be itching, right? So I'm going to tell you a few things as an introduction, but then I'm going to open up the floor, and please don't be bashful with your questions. Your question may be a question that someone else has, and so I encourage you to speak up. I tend to go as long as you want to go, and I, we're not running from any questions whatsoever. So let me start by saying that, well, first of all, I want to introduce a few people. One, I'd like to. You saw Chris Gray, who's our constituent services manager. Please give him a round of applause. I'm looking at Chief Owens, our fire chief. Please give him a round of applause. And I'm not going to go through everybody, y'all, because there's a lot of people in this room, but I do want to address our CAO, which is Louis Wright, who gave us the prayer. Fidelis Malembeka, who is our CFO and the first ever CFO for the city of Jackson. Dr. Safia Omari, and I'm just going through directors at this point. Dr. Safia Omari, who is our chief of staff. Going back a little further, I see Chief Joseph Wade of the Jackson Police Department. And Dr. Reed, who is our first ever Director of IT. And if there are any directors that I just don't see, and Keisha is our Deputy Director over Solid Waste. She does a great job, though. I appreciate. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge Councilman Grizel, Brian Grizel, who is here joining us. He is the councilman for Ward 4. And so we appreciate him being here and offering himself to not only serve the people, but being present at a moment like this when we're in critical discussion. So let me start by saying that I want to caution you. I want to caution you that you don't allow people to come in front of you, myself included, right, and merely admire a problem, right? Come forward and say, well, you got infrastructure problems and, you know, we got public safety concerns and economic development concerns, but yet they never offer a solution to those problems, right? They never offer programmatic solutions and tell you how they're going to get there, because I can tell you a vision that I want to build a great big mansion, but I got to be able to tell you how I'm going to finance that thing, where the material's coming from, how are these things going to be accomplished, right? So that's what I want you to look for out of this discussion and any discussions from anybody going forward, that you not only understand what your problems are fundamentally, but you understand what are the solutions and what are the programmatic approaches that we have to those challenges. We know for some time, right? And I'm going to point to some things as examples, things that you know of, things you may not know of. And I'm going to use infrastructure as an example, and then I'm going to pass the mic on so we can get to your specific questions. We know for some time that we've had road infrastructure challenges, right? And at some point, I'm blessed that my father led by example and came in communities just like this, in churches just like this. And let's give a round of applause. This is one thing I forgot. Give a round of applause for Redeemer, Pastor McGowan, and the wonderful job. I had the blessed opportunity to come and worship with them maybe a couple of months ago, and I really took from that sermon. And I want to come back. My wife and my kids, we were here with the Secretary of the Interior that came to join us. So we want to do that again. But, you know, returning back to what I was saying, we know that we have infrastructure problems. We know that my father and his administration came into churches like this and community meetings and saying, listen, I need for the residents of Jackson to agree to a 1% sales tax, right? Because we don't have the resources to deal with the decay of our infrastructure, right? And you, being the best resource that we had, did something that was amazing. You voted over 90% to tax your sales, demonstrating that you're willing to have shared sacrifice in order to see to a better Jackson, right? I would tell you that there aren't many communities, many cities that could boast of a community that's willing to do something like that. From that, though, we get approximately $13 million annually, right? Fortification that was done right before that passed. Fortification is a project that costs more than $13 million by itself in order to do a complete reconstruction of that road, right? And so we not only needed that stream of revenue so that we can deal with the challenges in our roads, right? We had to be creative with the financing so that we can get to projects that are so large and have been eyesores and problem areas for us so long that if we just depended on $13 million annually, you would never see a Medgar Evers get done. You would never see a Riverside Drive get done. You would never see a Northside Drive get done. And by the way, remember what Northside used to look like, right? And now the complaints are that we have speeding up and down Northside. And we want to address that, right? But that's an example of how the creation of a solution in one area may create another problem. You didn't have to worry about speeding before us because your road was so horrible, right, that nobody wanted to speed up Northside Drive, right? And so that's a challenge that we want to meet, but we have to make sure that we're able to have a full and comprehensive look at how things are being addressed, because we're able to see those big projects accomplished because of our creativity. What we did was the first ever leveraging of a 1% sales tax or a bond referendum that not only happened in Jackson's history, but in the state of Mississippi's history. We took that $13 million that we were getting annually each year, and we went to the market and we went to banks and we said, listen, if you can give us more money up front, the only way that we're going to be able to do these big projects, right, then we will contribute, or we can show you a consistent line of funding that we can pay you back. And so they gave us, I believe, $50 million, right, on the front end, which allowed us to get creative in tackling these long existing problem areas across our city, right? Not saying that there isn't a lot of more work to be done, but this is the seed money that allows us to do those things. We also became aggressive. We not only got a BRIC grant to do projects, we've gotten a RAISE grant, which essentially are the same things, just depending on presidential administration. They just name them different things, right? And so we've become more aggressive in terms of our federal relationships and requests in order to see to it that these projects can be done. So that's how we're doing many of your road projects. So you know what's coming. The city of Jackson, our first priority was to deal with major thoroughfares, right? Because those are the more frequently traveled areas. Those are the areas that deteriorate at the swiftest pace because more cars are passing through and stopping and starting and doing all of that on the major thoroughfares. When we started, we gave our partners, the county, the responsibility to do neighborhood streets because we had to focus not only on those roads, but on the sidewalks. And we also decided that we would become more intelligent in how we attack or how we address infrastructure challenges. What you've seen on places like Meadowbrook Road, what you've seen on places, I'm trying to think of another area that had a road diet, Capitol Street. Instead of taking streets that are 4 lanes, in which we don't have the traffic count that we used to have on those streets, and just repaving it, and every 5-6 years or so coming back to those same streets, trying to repave those same streets, trying to deal with the same level of deterioration that we deal with, we said we're going to be strategically looking at how we do road diets. What is a road diet, Mayor? That means that we take on the approach that we want to be a multimodal mobility city, which means however you choose to travel, whether it be by car, whether it be walking, whether it be by bike, whether it be by scooter one day, whether it be by any of these means, we decided that we would take away a lane or two in the circumstance, and we would extend the sidewalk more in order to provide more cover, more safety to pedestrian traffic, to allow for bike lanes and all of these things that we hadn't seen in the city of Jackson. And what does that accomplish? It allows us to be that multimodal mobility city that we want to be, right? But it also allows us long-term to save money, because I hadn't seen a pothole created yet because somebody walked too fast on a sidewalk, right? Because somebody rode their bike too fast in a bike lane, right? Now, I do want to tell everybody who lives on Meadowbrook Road that you do not know what a bike lane is, ma'am, ladies and gentlemen, right? Because I see cars parked in the bike lane, right? I see the UPS truck. I see the post office parked into that bike lane. And so we're going to look at how we protect that. But that was intended, and it is intended, so that we become more intelligent, and not only how we become a city that embraces the ways in which and the means in which people look to travel in its diversity across this city, but it also allows us to save money. So that's roads and how we're approaching them. And what we're doing now is because we were able to tackle so many major thoroughfares like the ones that I mentioned. I hadn't even talked about Terry Road and all of those other places that we've tackled big projects. Now we're turning our focus to neighborhood streets. Many of you are a part of neighborhood associations where we sent a questionnaire maybe a year or two ago where we wanted to know, we not only wanted to look at street condition and the assessment of the road, but we need to know how you travel in your neighborhood. We need to know what is a priority to you because we don't travel in your neighborhood like you do. And so we got those surveys back and we start evaluating them. And first of all, be clear that not every road is created equal, right? And so when we say, I want my road paved or my road done, the condition or the pipes or what may be under your road may be different than the next road. And so we have to look at costs so that we can have the maximum impact that we want to have off limited resources. One of the things that you will hear from me today is that most things that we have challenges doing are not a matter of political will. It's not a matter because we ain't fighting too hard or we don't care enough or we don't want to do these things. It's a matter of a lack of resources. And so my primary job is to identify how we find the resources to accomplish the things that we collectively want to do, right? And so that's what we've been aiming to do, is get creative in how we apply these resources. And so it started with a few roads before the end of last year. And now, as we've gotten into spring, you will start seeing other areas where neighborhood streets will be paved. And we're doing them, we have a schedule of streets that we're doing. And the way we're doing them is that when we send out the contractor that wins the bid to do the paving, we do it within a radius where all of the streets are in the same radius because there is something called a mobilization fee. That means every time that contractor has to pick up all of his equipment, all of his tools, and move it to the other side of town, we have to pay the expense of them having to remobilize in that area. And so in order to make sure that our money stretches as far as we possibly can, what we have done is we're going to do this radius first so that we get everything that we set out to do within this area done, and then we're going to do the next area. That allows us to be better stewards of the public dollars that you entrust us with. Because if we're crisscrossing town, wasting dollars because we just want people to be appeased and we're not having these type of honest discussions with them, right? Then what ultimately happens is that we're not good stewards of your dollars. So I want you to know that many of your neighborhood streets, not all, but many of your neighborhood streets will start to be addressed starting this spring. Another challenge that we have is our stormwater infrastructure. And I expect that there'll be some people who deal with flooding, flash flooding challenges in their neighborhoods. And just like our road infrastructure, our storm drains, our creeks, all of the tributaries that we have not been addressed for decades. And that means that we have serious work to do. Just as we came out of a wastewater consent decree, we entered into an agreed stipulated order on our drinking water side, and we'll get to that in a second. If we are unable to tackle our stormwater system, then the city of Jackson can find itself in a similar position where we're dealing with a stormwater consent decree, and we're trying to figure out how we address these problems. And so I'm not just giving you the problem, I'm giving you the solution or the approach, the practical approach in how we're addressing them. So what are we doing to deal with stormwater? We get now what you call a use tax or a modernization tax. They go by either one of them, right? What a modernization tax is that all of the goods and services that you buy online, the state legislature a couple of years ago decided that they would start taxing the goods and services that were purchased online and coming into the state of Mississippi. So every community, by some formula, which No, I don't think it's equitable, but it's better than what we had. By some formula, we now get money off of what Jacksonians buy online. And so I always use my uncle here as an example. I encourage him that if he's going to shop at Sam's like he does every weekend, right, that you first buy those goods online and then go pick them up at Sam's. So at least we get some notion of the tax benefit to the city of Jackson. And out of that utilization tax, we get in the neighborhood of about $10 million a year. Just like the road projects I told you, certain flood problems or flood mitigation projects could cost about $10 million. That's how severe many of these challenges are. And so just like we did with the 1% sales tax, we said, hey, we're going to get creative here. We're going to go to the market and we're going to get more money up front. We're now doing a leveraging of our modernization tax. And so we're trying to get about $30 million up front, and that closes at the end of this month going into the next month. So by mid-May, for sure, we should have that $30 million. And because we want to be aggressive, we've already tapped an engineering firm that we're looking to do the assessment in communities to know what your drainage issues are. Stormwater and flash flooding problems are one of those that when people give the call and they said it's been raining hard and this is coming in my house and Mayor, I can't do anything about it. I owe you honesty. I owe you truth. There is nothing we can do in that moment in time. We have to prepare for war in times of peace. We have to be able to go out and mitigate those challenges when it isn't raining, when we have time to do the construction, and that's what we're trying to do. So when we get this $30 million, we're going to be looking at how we give a much more comprehensive look at our stormwater challenges than we've been able to do in the last 30 years plus. Another challenge that we all are aware of, in fact, the world is aware that we've had in the city of Jackson, is our drinking water. I moved to Jackson in 1988. Best decision my parents ever made, by the way. I remember in 1989 when there was a freeze in Jackson that debilitated our water system. And over the years, since I've been in this city, there are far too many times to recount of when we've had water interruptions, when we've had boil water notices. In fact, when the experts came here, we didn't know that it wasn't normal to have a boil water notice because we've always had boil water notices in the city of Jackson. And so when, for years, not only my administration, but Tony Yarber's administration, my father's administration, Harvey Johnson's administration, even Kane Ditto's administration, all went to the state legislature and said, listen, it's not a matter of if, but when. Not a matter of if, but when our drinking water system will fail. Not only because we have a water treatment facility which is not efficient, we have the only water drinking facility in the country, and I've said this how many times, Dr. Omari? I've said this 100 times to the EPA, to everybody, and no one has been able to provide an example yet. We have the only drinking water treatment facility that is both conventional and membrane working in tandem with each other. Why is that important? Well, one, we also have the only drinking water system in the state of Mississippi that requires Class A operators because we're one of 2 surface water treatment plants in the state of Mississippi. So all of the other cities operate off of, they're getting it off of well water in an aquifer that they dig into the ground, and they don't get it off of a lake like we do, or a river. We get it off of the Pearl River. Now, that becomes important, and this is part of the conversation as to why Jackson's water system is so important. Don't believe me, go look at some of the reports. I think it was the Clarion Ledger that did a piece that talked about how the aquifer in the greater Jackson area is at one of its lowest points. And there's concern as to whether that aquifer will be abundant enough to sustain the water needs of everyone who's pulling on it. So what you get out of an aquifer is that there may or may not be an abundance of water. What you get off of a surface water system is, while there is typically an abundance of water, the process of treating it is far more complex and difficult. And so when we're searching for that workforce in order to help us with our water system, those Class A operators, we can't go to Brandon, Madison, Ridgeland, or Clinton and steal them by paying them more, because they don't have Class A operators either. So we literally have to train up these technicians, because in order to be a Class A operator, it requires either 4 years of college and then 2 years of training after college, or if you come straight out of high school, it requires 6 years of training in order to be a Class A operator. And so these are the challenges that we've been working with. But we went to the state, we need money, and there was a deliberate indifference towards the needs of the city of Jackson. In fact, I'm gonna shoot you straight. In fact, I went to one state leader and he was telling me, look, you need to give up your water system. He said, listen, you don't have the technical expertise at hand to deal with it, and you don't have the money. He said, what do you think? Biden's gonna write you a check, right? Well, what he didn't know is that this administration wasn't gonna leave any stone unturned. What he didn't know is that there was a method to my madness, and being on TV, national TV, every time you looked up is because I needed that issue. Now, I'm not only trying to pressure those that are in opposition to what we're trying to do. I think it's intelligent to pressure your friends. You need to make certain that they can't ignore the challenges you have. And so we were on TV every day because I needed it to make it an international issue so that you can't look away from the people of Jackson. You can't say, I can avoid that issue and I can't talk about it. And so what it ended up garnering was a call directly from the President of the United States and the Vice President of the United States, and several visits from the administrator of the EPA, Administrator Regan. And what they all told me is that I don't like the way that the state of Mississippi is treating the city of Jackson. In fact, there's a Title VI complaint against the state of Mississippi filed by the NAACP for discriminatory funding to the city of Jackson. And so what they did, they said, I promise you, we're going to find a solution. I'm telling you how we ended up in this stipulated order. I'm telling you how we got the money, right? So that if anybody else lies to you, then I challenge you, don't believe what I say. I'm telling you to research what I say. Because I believe that you're intelligent, that I don't need to tell you what to think. You're smart enough to know how to think on your own. And so what happened with that is, they told me that they were going to find a way not only to avoid the state from taking us over, who hadn't supported us, but another way to get the money. And so what happened was the EPA administrator met with me in my office, and he said, Mayor, I see what's happening, and I'm going to protect you. He said, the only way that I can stop the state from taking you over is if I take you over. And so we made an agreement for an agreed stipulated order so that those who had showed no concern for the city of Jackson, invested no money per any of our requests from ditto forward, I'm going to find a way that we can make certain that they don't take over your water system. And why did they want to take over the water system? Because you need to know that too. A concession firm came and met with me. That's a firm that is basically offering to privatize your water. And what they said, Mayor, we'll give you $300 million if you'll enter into this concession agreement with us so that we can get some revenue, that we can share the ownership of your water system. Why is that important, and why is that a problem? Well, first of all, we had just won a lawsuit where we got $90 million and it was gone like that. The only way that we were able to avoid insolvency as a city was that we were able to get that money from the Siemens lawsuit. So I knew that $300 million to someone who has never had it seems like a heck of a lot of money, right? But when you just exhaust $90 million just to stay above board or afloat, and you know that you have 50% loss, in your system, your distribution, which means that your pipes, we're losing about 50% of our water. Industry standard is about 15%. Then I knew that $300 million, one, isn't going to take me very far. And the more important fact was that I knew that this company wasn't coming to Jackson because they were benevolent, because they simply wanted to do the right thing. If a company is making a privatized company is making an investment in you of that level, then they expect to return a profit. And the only way that they can return a profit off of $300 million is to find a way to tax you in a way or raise your water rates so much that they not only get their $300 million back, but they get another $300 million on top of that, right? Or some substantial sum. And so that's why I didn't enter the concession agreement. That's why Jackson, all of a sudden, the water system you've been neglecting for decades, all of a sudden became attractive again. I want you to know what's happening behind the scenes so that you're informed, so that no one can just tell you something, but you are armed with information to understand what's really going on. And so when that didn't happen and we weren't willing to do, and they told me to give up the system, Administrator Regan said that he was going to take over the system. And he also said that what we're going to do is put a third-party administrator there. Now, he didn't pick Ted Henifin. Ted Henifin wasn't in the room at that time. Ted Henifin wasn't in the room. He never knew the discussions. He never knew what the purpose was. He didn't know any of those things. What happened was people came to me, right, Dr. Omari? And they said, listen, during the emergency that happened 2 Augusts ago, right, when we were all without water, they said, there's a guy here who has demonstrated a lot of technical know-how. He understands water systems, and everybody from the EPA, from the State Health Department, from MEMA, from FEMA, everybody's saying how talented this guy is. And he's willing to come and relocate to Jackson in order to help, lead this third-party relationship that helps support the infrastructure that we need. And so Ted wasn't a part of that discussion. And so when he comes in today, first of all, let me be clear. I am the biggest cheerleader of Ted Henifin. And I have to be, because his success is our success. I want him to be successful. I want him to be successful. But no one is in a position that I'm going to say that it's okay that you don't listen to the concerns of every community because you hadn't been here for the last 30 years suffering from the water insecurity that the people of Jackson have suffered from. So I want community engagement, and that's not a commercial on TV. That's not community engagement. That's not paying for radio advertisement. Community engagement is listening to people and listening to their circumstances, their conditions, their experiences. It's answering the phone when they call you. It's having places where people can meet and talk about their billing and the challenges because we've had stranded bills. It's not cutting out all of the customer service locations and having an office that don't nobody in Jackson know where it's at. And so when I'm pressuring these things, it's not because I dislike anybody. It's because I'm passionate. I'm not led by hate, y'all. I'm led by love. I love my people so much that I'm not going to let go of anybody until they bless us. In this church, if you understand, if you know your scripture, you know where I'm pulling that from. I won't let go of the hem of your garment until you bless us. For all of those who've been accusing me of being Muslim, listen to the scripture I say sometimes. Not that it's wrong, that if somebody, that's their spirituality, but I digress. So that is why we are passionate about these things. And so the president lived up to his word. And the city of Jackson didn't only get the most money in our history, in the state of Mississippi's history, but the most money in U.S. history. We were given $800 million in total to deal with our water infrastructure. By comparison, the city of Flint, which is probably the most pronounced water insecurity example that people know, was given $100 million. And so all of the people who, are trying to rewrite the narrative of what happened, I need you to know how that happened. I need you to know why we are so insistent. I need you to know why we are so passionate. Because we didn't go to Washington. My team forced me to go to Washington for the 4th time in that month because I was dog tired and dog sick. And they said, Mayor, this may be the time that you get the money. And they were absolutely right. And so we got that money. And so we're going to ensure, because we fought for that money, that we not only have an equitable system, that we not only have a reliable system, but that we are honest with people as we're working to rebuild the system. So you can't tell people who have lived in this city and dealt with water insecurity for 30 years that the reason that you had water interruption this year was because you all filled your bathtubs at the same time, listening to the same social media page, as if we all watch the same. We're so small at Jackson. We all watch the same social media page at the same time, and we call each other. We say, okay, on 3, 1, 2, 3, fill her up, right? My father used to say that you got to give people more credit than that. The people of this city are far smarter than that. That is why I ring the alarm on these things, because the reality is I knew we would have an interruption. You know why I knew we were going to have an interruption again? If I know that there's 50% loss, and I know in the summertime, I didn't see you digging up any roads to lay any pipe, then common sense will tell me those pipes didn't heal themselves. They didn't mend themselves. And so when the water, when the weather gets cold like it does, and the ground freezes, and we have these breaks, we're going to have these challenges, and that's something that we have to deal with. But the reality is that I don't have an expectation that overnight Ted or anybody fixes the system. What I have is an expectation that you communicate honestly with people and you say, listen, we have a lot of road to cover. We have a lot of pipes. We have several hundred miles of pipe, more than 100 miles of pipe that we need to touch. And so it's going to take some time. But this is the programmatic approach that we're going to have, just like I'm giving you programmatic solutions about how we got the money for our drinking water, how we're going to use the money for our stormwater, how we use the money for our roads. Give us the plan and tell us how you're going to do it and be accountable to that. I just want that accountability to those things. And so that's where we find ourselves at this time, is that yes, we have a sea change potentially because we have historic funds in order to fix our water system. But the question is whether we're going to hold anybody, myself included, if you have agency over this challenge, then we need to hold you accountable to see to it that you do what you're supposed to do. That's why these meetings are so important. These are the things that you don't hear in a 30-second soundbite on the TV. These are the things that people don't come and tell you. And so that's what we have to fight for. We have to fight to make sure that we're informed, because if you don't have a seat at the table, you're likely on the menu. We have to make certain that we have this information moving forward. I said it was going to be a short introduction. I'm never good at that. So Lord, forgive me, I lied, right? But I wanted to start with that. Now get into the individual questions that you may have. I'm going to answer as much as I can. If it comes to something that I might need some specific information from one of the departments, then I will invite one of our department heads up here to talk about it. With that, I invite somebody to come forward and bring your question to us. Not all at one time, though. Come on. Well, you could talk. I could hear you, but I don't know if the person in the back can hear you. Your back is turned towards them.
Yeah. My name is Rhoda. I live in Lake Trace Homeowners Association over in Northeast Jackson. My question is, with so much going on against you, why is it that you want to continue to fight the fight that you are doing? And I applaud you for what you do. But where is the heart of what you're doing for us?
Yeah. Well, let me say this. If you know my background, we've been here for a long time. if people know my family, long before anybody ran for mayor, we were doing work within community. We had a community center on the corner of Martin Luther King and Randall called the Malcolm X Grassroots Center, right? At that center, we were doing education for children. We were doing political education. We were doing martial arts training. We had a basketball program that started out of that organization. My sister and I did a summer camp for kids that we would literally do fish fries every summer in order to raise the money. And we had about 60 kids in that program that we were going knocking on doors in Georgetown community. And we were saying, give your kids to us for the summer at no cost. At no cost. And so the answer in short for you is that I don't get too high or too low. Even when you see me battling on issues with council members, I don't think that they're my enemies. I think that we have some forces that oppose us that are much larger than that. And so that's not where my focus is. And so no matter whether I'm mayor, no matter whether I return to my practice of law or whatever I'm doing, I'm always going to fight for people. Because for me, if you want to know the selfish part of it, that's how my parents raised me. We moved to Jackson in 1988, not because we had family members here, but because my dad was here in the 70s fighting to create self-determined communities. And so what my parents did, instead of shielding us from a movement, they said that they would give their most precious resource to that movement. And so I was raised this way. I'm weird like that, right? I'm built like that. And so it's going to be a tough job trying to knock me off of trying to fight for people, right? And so it keeps them alive for me. So long as I'm doing this work, my mother and my father are always with me. That's why I do that. All right. Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am. I done start sweating up here, boy. Huh?
Good afternoon, Mayor.
Appreciate it. Good afternoon.
Thank you for your hard work and endeavors in what you're doing. But I have a question for the city. My name is Onethia Crawford, and I purchased a home in East Jackson, April 2015. Excuse me, 2019. I moved here after, I've been here about 8 years. Bought my home 3 years ago. 5 years ago. I bought it in North Jackson for a reason, which is like Eastover, County Line area. In the 5 years that I've been in my home, I can see the dilapidation of the area. My first question is, after the closing of the hotel on 55, I don't know the exact name of it, but the transient rate of people that are out on County Line Road and everything on Jackson side has tripled. Just across the street, I noticed they won't go across the street where the city line crosses, but they're right in this area. Mm-hmm. What is the city doing to combat the transients that are basically taking over this area?
Absolutely. You asked a very important question. So first, to be clear, the issue of homelessness is not a Jackson issue. It's a regional issue. What do I mean by that? Actually, we have video evidence of many of the surrounding communities putting transient or homeless people in their police cars and dropping them off in Jackson. They don't drop them off with resources. They don't drop them off with a plan. And so part of the challenge is that we're not only dealing with Jackson's homeless issue, we're dealing with everybody's homeless issue. And we're not getting any resources to deal with it, right? And so what is the solution to homelessness? The solution isn't arresting them, criminalizing their poverty, for multiple reasons. Not only is that not a demonstration of our humanity, it is impractical. Where are you going to take them? To the jail that's already overcrowded so that they can get out and be homeless again somewhere else, right? And circle around in different areas? And so what we're doing is this, once again, a programmatic solution. First, we're working to get an accurate count of the homeless population. Every city does what they call a point-in-time count. And you do a point-in-time count only to get federal dollars, which is useful to get the money, but it's not useful enough to understand your problem because they are transient, right? They move. They don't stay in one place. And so if you don't have an accurate count of what your homeless population is, then you don't have an accurate picture of what it takes to resolve it. And so now what we're doing is trying to work to get an accurate count, and then we're trying to disaggregate that data. What we want to understand is who is homeless for a lack of services, meaning addiction, meaning mental health, meaning any number of social services because they aged out of the system, meaning foster systems, foster care systems, and who is homeless just for simply a lack of housing. And what we're trying to do, which has been in the media quite a lot, is we're trying to build transitional housing so that we can not only have a place for them to stay, but we can couple that with the social services. Because if I give you a home and you have an addiction issue and we haven't addressed that addiction issue, then me putting you in a home is only for a temporary period of time, because your addiction issues that are unaddressed will prevail and you will find yourself on the street again. And so what we're trying to do is create functional zero homelessness. What is functional zero homelessness? Functional zero means that we're looking to make sure that nobody is homeless on the streets of Jackson for more than 30 days unless it is by choice, right? And if it is by choice, then I am willing to be more restrictive in where we allow those type of encampments to happen, right? But I need to first address the bigger problem of doing that. And we've been working on that. We had a plan to deal with transitional housing, and we're not giving it up. We're going to have to start over and do some other things to relaunch it, right? One of the things is that it requires that each unit has a bathroom in it. And if you want to encourage somebody to get off the street, you restore dignity when you tell somebody that you'll have your own bathroom, that you can take your own shower and take care of yourself. And so we're redoing it so that the units we do have that. What's the problem, though? Everybody agrees that you need to do something to help the homeless. Nobody agrees that they want that transitional housing in their neighborhood, right? In fact, what they call it is a name for it. It's called NIMBYism. It means not in my backyard. And this is one of the points where I think as a leader, I have to stand up to that and say, listen, I understand the sentiment, I understand the concerns, I understand the ugliness of homelessness in its many forms. And the fact that you don't want to see that, one, we're trying to solve that, and we're not trying to create a bigger problem, we're trying to solve the problem you already have. But two, if you can't get used to transitional housing in your backyard, you better get used to homelessness in your front yard. That's the reality. So that's what we're trying to do. We launched, using some federal funds, we launched an effort to do transitional housing in the Capers area, because one, it has the ability to be contained and to bring the programs there to make sure that they're safe, right? And all of those things. So yes, it is a big problem. One, it's a regional problem without money, but two, we are doing everything that we can in order to address the issue. I'll leave that alone. All right, next question. I'm good, Chris.
Good evening. My name is Germany Gray, and I stay in Ward 5. And I've just been listening to what you said regarding the relationship with the water crisis with Ted Heffen and this and that. And my question is, and you might have answered it before, it seems like there's a lack of communication between you and Ted Heffen. And I think I even read in an article that y'all haven't communicated in months. And I really want you to explain how this miscommunication occurred and why it has continued in the way that it has. Because it seems like y'all have similar values. It seems like y'all both want to help the city of Jackson from what y'all have shared with us, but somehow y'all can't get on the same page. So how does that happen?
So one, it isn't a miscommunication. There's no communication. And it's not because I haven't reached out. It's not because we haven't scheduled meetings. It's not because I didn't have him at my house for dinner. not only trying to welcome you into our city and start on a good foot, I wanted to give you a Mississippi welcome, right? My wife made red beans and rice and catfish for this man, right? So I don't have a problem with him. My issue isn't with him. My issue is with whether or not you take this seriously. So what happened, so that you know? Ted Henifin was called out by community members first because he was giving contradictory messaging depending on where he was. Community members came to me and they said, Mayor, we're hearing this. We're hearing Ted said this on this particular neighborhood association meeting. And I'm like, listen, y'all, correct me when I'm lying, right? I said, y'all need to give Ted the benefit of the doubt. We need to give him a chance. We need to understand. And then by the 10th, 11th, 12th time of seeing and hearing for myself the things, and him saying, well, I misspoke every time, or I did this, it became a challenge. So we said, okay, Ted, well, we want you to work with us. We want you to understand. And what happened was, this is when he stopped the communication. You already know this because you live in Jackson. Y'all have been receiving letters that the city of Jackson has had to issue for several months now. You may not be receiving it now that Ted's in control of them. But it was saying that the city of Jackson has not completed a corrosion study. And because we haven't completed a corrosion study, you need to know that if there is lead in our water, what the harmful effects of lead could be. And those letters say that pregnant women and children under the age of 5 could be particularly vulnerable to that. Now, do I fundamentally, or do I have knowledge, or do I believe that there is a elevated lead, presence of lead within our water system? Nothing has been demonstrated to me that proves that, right? But if our objective is not only to fix the water system, but to rebuild confidence in the water system, we're trying to do everything that we can to rebuild that confidence. And so what happened was, when we dealt with our water crisis 2 years ago, everybody from around the country was delivering water bottles to the city of Jackson. We had so much water that we had limited space to carry, right? You could go on any corner and there was a water donation going on there. And so we had a conversation with United Health. And they said, well, listen, we see everybody's delivering you water. What can we do to be helpful? And so we said, at some point, the water's going to come back on, and we need to rebuild that confidence. And so we have researched these water filters that medical providers and experts are saying, health professionals are saying, are the type of water filters that you need in order to ensure better reliability or better security in the water you drink, right? Purity in the water you drink. And so they gave us this money in order to buy these water filters. We then, because we wanted to be connected with a population of pregnant women and, families that had children under the age of 5, we joined in with a medical provider, because we don't want your medical history, because we know HIPAA and everything else. So we then got with Jackson Hines Comprehensive Health, and we launched a giveaway of water filters to mothers who were pregnant and had children under the age of 5. Ted felt like, and mind you, our work in that predated Ted even coming to Jackson. And so he calls Judge Wingate and says, Judge Wingate, they're trying to undermine me. They're passing out water filters so that people think that Jackson's water is dangerous. Had nothing to do with you, Ted. This train was moving before you even came to Jackson, right? It had to do with the fact that if you're requiring me to issue this notice, scaring our people, then why don't we provide them something that gives them more security and supports them? And so when we passed out those water filters, he called the judge, who they're good friends, really good friends, and they summoned me to court to explain why I was passing out water filters. And I told the judge, I'm not apologizing for helping the people of Jackson. I'm not going to apologize. And then he wanted to make me, he put me in between the Department of Health and Ted, and I'm supposed to be arguing why these letters, I don't know what he wanted me to argue, but I'm in the middle of them telling me to put out the letter and him telling me not to put out water filters, right? And so ever since that point, he has refused to communicate with us. Ever since that point. Coincidentally, he recently gave us a donation for water, the same water filters we were passing out, right? So I guess he understood the point now. But that's what's happening. It's not because of refusal. Be clear, y'all. Be clear. I'm not just some person that's unable to communicate and be diplomatic with somebody. You wouldn't have a school system if I wasn't able to talk to a governor who didn't share the same political ideology that I had. We were able to come together and reason, and now our school district that was a consistent F is 1 point away from a B, right? You can get that a round of applause. And so I'm not caught up in the personalities, but I do need you to understand that I am going to be passionate about these things, that this is serious to me. And so Ted is welcome to be here, welcome to come to my office, welcome to call my phone, welcome to be a part of any process that we work collaboratively in order to fix this water system. But I have not shut off communication. He refused. We were having, so you know, we had a meeting every Monday. So I'm not just talking about, hey, Ted, why won't you schedule something? We had a standing meeting every week. Was it Monday? No, that's something else. Every other Monday. And he simply stopped coming, stopped showing up, stopped appearing on Zoom because they were on Zooms before when he couldn't make it. He refused to meet with us again. Yes. Oh, and be clear that when I talk about this relationship, now the judge has struck out at the EPA because they have said that he hasn't met the benchmarks that he was supposed to meet. So now, not only is the mayor evil, now the EPA is evil, right? And then he struck out at the health department when they had a bad test, right? So everybody else is the problem except for this ability for us to work together and to communicate together. At some point, we're going to figure out, what is the least common denominator in all of these disputes that are taking place. Any other questions? This is a reporter question. Come on. Do you live in Jackson? Okay, you can ask a question.
Okay, well, my name is Maddie. Y'all might know me as Madeline Nolan on Six. Oh! There we go. That's about to start writing my story for tonight. But my question is about the zoo, the standing of the zoo. Every time that you have a press conference, you talk about how y'all are looking to hire zookeepers at the young age of 18 years old. Tell me a little bit about, I guess, why y'all are hiring that young, and then where is the standing of the zoo at this point?
Well, the zoo has had a number of infrastructure projects that have been done and repairs that have been made that needed to be repaired and things that are still being repaired. I think ultimately what we're trying to do is not only look at the zoo, but look at Livingston Park, create more of an attraction in Livingston Park. You have a disc golf installation that is being built there. We're looking at building other things like paddle boats and other things within Livingston Park and create a better attraction to the zoo. I think that we have summarily dismissed. Listen, I live in Northeast Jackson, so I don't have any issue with Northeast Jackson. But if we believe that we can live in a community and strip everything off of one side of town and relocate everything on one side of town, and somehow we're going to be safe, somehow we're going to have everybody stay in Jackson, we don't live in the Hunger Games bubble, y'all, right? And so I think it's important that before we decide to take another resource out of a community, that we do our due diligence to see how likely it is to succeed. What we know about the zoo is this. Whenever we have ice cream safari, it's packed. What we know is when we had, blues in the zoo and everything else, people come out. So if you're telling me, and mind you, we've made a major investment in Capitol Street. Not only have we redone the roads in Capitol Street, right? We're looking to take those poles that are in the sidewalk, because that is the bane of my existence, the fact that those poles are there and the new sidewalks we did. But we're doing that, and we're focusing, to one of the earlier questions, we're focusing on blight elimination in that area so that we can eliminate the eyesores that exist there. But if you're afraid of the zoo or afraid of that community, right, then you should be afraid of it when we offer an ice cream too, right? And so what that tells me is that we're not marketing enough, that the attraction hasn't been invested enough. If a child wants to see, the animals that they see on TV, they want to see all of these things that we got to see. I got to see elephants, I got to see animals that we no longer have. And so how are we going to do that? Well, one, we need to make sure that we have all of the staffing that we need. We need young people, and I know that we're offering really young people to be lifeguards. I have to check on the exact age, and you could be right, for the zookeepers, right? But we're offering not only a job, we're offering the training so that we not only meet what benefits the city of Jackson and our objectives, we help a young person get certification for free, that could take them in a career wherever they want to go. So one, my interest in inviting young people is not only about the zoo, it's about opportunity. It's about elevating their standing in life. It's about allowing them to pursue the dream of being a zookeeper wherever they want to, or maybe becoming a veterinarian. And so that's why we're doing that. Y'all are a shy bunch. All right, thank you.
Hi, thank you for coming. I'm losing my voice a little bit. I'm a kindergarten teacher.
All right.
And I've been talking all day. My name is Jessica Aiken. I'm actually a member of Redeemer, and I live in this neighborhood. And so thank you for coming. I know that there are a lot of really big issues that the city faces that you've already addressed. And I feel like the library is kind of a smaller issue when it comes to, if you've got the money, you've got to fix the roads, you've got to fix the water, and I get it. But as an educator and as a mom of 2 little boys, I believe, and I know a lot of people in the community believe, that the library is the heartbeat of some of our community education, not only for young people, but for older people as well, to be able to come and to learn about things, to be able to write a resume, to be able to communicate with each other, to print things off at its simplest. But we have the Tisdale Library right here has been gone for a while. The Welty is now gone. Our other thriving libraries are sometimes shut down, and you don't know when you can go because the floor is gone, the AC is, not working, and that kind of thing. So I guess my question is, how is the city moving forward with not only the Welty closing? I know that there are plans to reopen, hopefully in another location, but how can we as citizens really support the smaller community endeavors that are around us that we want to see thrive? How do we get another library close to some of the communities that don't have them? And how do we keep the ones that are open and are doing really well? How do we keep them open? And how do we get the AC to not, shut it down?
Absolutely.
So I guess that's my question.
Great question. I appreciate that. Well, the good news is that we have a plan for that. So you mentioned, and to be clear, I'm going to go through the different libraries. Let me start with the one that's closest to us. We had a plan initially, and we're returning back to that plan, but we had a plan initially to try to purchase the old Bat Furniture building and open the Tisdale Library there. The building is quite large, and so we were trying to use it in order to accomplish a few goals. Not only reopening the Tisdale Library, but we also pay a lot of money for the Precinct 4 police station, right? And so what we were trying to accomplish is not only have the library there, but also on one of the higher levels, having our police precinct there. So that way we not only reopen and provide a service to a community that is, it's been taken away because of the old library being demolished, and I'm going to get to why that happened and the condition of these buildings. But we are also able to save money. I'm about money, y'all. I'm about how we make good business decisions. We save money in our budget and aren't paying out money every year in high rent. So by owning a facility and using a dual purpose, we not only accomplish returning something to the community, but we're able to have a precinct that we're not paying for rent on. Next, the reason that it's convenient is because you have 3 gas stations that have had a number of activities in that area. You put your police closest to where the most issues take place within that precinct, and you give the convenience to our officers that if they need to travel within some other areas within their precinct, they have the benefit of being right on 55 to jump on and get to where they need to go. Yeah, we see you. You don't have to duck. So that's what we were trying to accomplish. Now, why did the Tisdale fall in disrepair? Why do we have all these issues? Well, ever since my father was in office, actually it predated him, we had a hailstorm that many of you remembered in around 2013, right? Chief said March the 18th of 2013. I didn't have that level of specificity, but he knows, right? And so we've been in an elongated struggle with Zurich, who is our insurance company over our facilities, trying to get money in order to repair the damage in these buildings. So you have leaks, all of these things that have created, and you know, once you have leaks in your roof and you got them across the city, then it really, leads to a swift deterioration of a facility. Well, we finally settled that lawsuit, and we've gotten more than $10 million from that settlement. And so one of the priorities, it's not the only one, but one of the priorities is providing money to our libraries so that they can do the repairs that they need, and we can look to acquire the Bat Furniture building so that we can restore the service to this community. Now, what I have asked, because I think, one, we have a very good library commission. I'm proud of them. I think that they're forward thinking. There's a few things that I've challenged them with. I told them and pledged the amount of money that I'm willing to put for the council to vote on for our libraries, and it was more than they had asked for, right? But I said, if I'm going to do that, because it is the Jackson Hines library system, you need to go to that county, and they need to give us something too. They need to be able, they don't have to match dollar for dollar, but I do need them to show a commitment that this is still the Jackson Hines library system. And the overwhelming majority of our county's revenue comes from Jackson. And so I think that they have picked up those conversations. We've been able to get an earmark, give credit where credit is due. I think it was Cindy Hyde Smith that provided the earmark for Eudora Welty Library specifically. And so it will help us with the relocation costs and, the total revenue that we're giving to them will help with the build out of that, what we need to do for Tisdale, as well as make critical repairs all across the city. So we have very clear plans. We have very specific dollars that we can point to in order to deal with these challenges. And so that's what we're doing. And for those that are unaware, Eudora Welty, and this is another thing that is important. Eudora Welty is being demolished, one, because of the condition of the building. Two, because libraries are no longer warehouses for books. While you may have some footprint of books that you want kids to be able to touch and feel, and I think that's an experience we don't need to rob them of, libraries by far are used, more for the computer capacity that they have, other research that people want to do. And so we want to have one which is consistent with what libraries look like and are used for today. And the other challenge that I gave our commission is I said, what are you competing with in your libraries? You're competing with Barnes & Noble. You're competing with, other bookstores or even Starbucks to some extent where people go. And so we need to look to add other services, maybe have some coffee shops in our libraries so that it not only attracts people back to the library, but it also, creates new revenue that we can sustain these repairs. I can tell you how we're going to try to repair it now, but I don't only need to be looking at how we repair it now. We need to have a plan of how we're going to maintain it for the next 10, 20 years going forward. And that's what we're trying to do. Okay. She's gone now, but this note says that 16-year-olds for lifeguards, 18-year-olds for zookeepers. Apply on the city's website today. All right, I did my commercial. All right. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Do you live in Jackson?
I do live in Jackson.
Okay, all right, that's what I'm gonna ask all y'all. Come to the microphone so they can. You gonna come up to the microphone and ain't gonna use it?
Okay. You talked about the 1% sales tax and like how that money was going towards paving streets, mainly main thoroughfares in the beginning. Could you talk a little bit about why you decided on the streets that you decided on that'll be paved in the spring?
Well, I exclusively didn't
Right.
decide on them.
How y'all came up with that for people who may be wondering why these streets are getting paved over others?
Well, we took from the list. We asked residents and neighborhood associations to rank their streets 1 through 3, right? 1 being the street that was in most critical need of being repaired. 2 and 3, and so we took that list. We went and reviewed those streets. What we found is from the point that they did their survey, that in that time, and that's been more than a year now, there were some streets that the county may have paved, and we could scratch that off. There were some streets that we knew likely had infrastructure challenges up under the ground that Jackson Water is going to have to deal with. And so we certainly didn't want to go pave those streets and then have Jackson Water come and dig them up, right? And then like I said, we looked at that radius in order to determine what was the closest, right? The length of the streets, those things, all of those things had impact. And so that's the process that we went through. Do I agree with everything that we came up with as a group? Every street is not where I would have wanted to, and some streets were left off. If you go back and watch the 1% meetings, you'll see that I fought for a couple of streets that I felt needed to be done. And I said, I may get outvoted here, right? But I need to lift these up. I will tell you that 2 of those streets, and they're not in your neighborhoods, right? Because you still got streets that are being done, but one of those streets is Mobile Avenue in Georgetown, which has a number of challenges and issues and infrastructure problems on it. And another one is it's a neighborhood street, but it's a pretty long street, and that's Floral Drive in Ward 2. And we're still going to try to make those happen, but they weren't initially approved by that commission. Yes, ma'am.
Hi there.
Hi, how are you
Charlotte
doing?
Reeves. Since you were talking about the streets again, will the infrastructure be updated before the streets are paved? Is that what you are doing?
So we're not doing so the streets that have underground infrastructure that need to be dealt with,
Right.
we're trying to coordinate with Jackson Water about where they are focusing and targeting and where they're looking to dig up and take out, galvanized pipe, for instance, so that they can get away from small diameter pipe, which has a lot of the challenge or contributes significantly to the challenge of how our water flows, is that many of the areas that are serviced don't have service lines that are large enough to serve the communities that they're in. And so we're trying to, as best we can, coordinate with them so that is done before we pave a street. But most of the projects that we have done, when you look at Meadowbrook, when you look at Mill Street and all those, we did a complete restructuring. We're not, if you look at the quality, you can typically tell what streets the city of Jackson has done versus some other streets that have been done is because, like I said, we're not only dealing with the infrastructure under them when we go to those, we're dealing with road diets where it makes sense. We're doing all of that, and so that's what our plan is.
Because I didn't want the money to be wasted
No.
on that. Then the other thing, is there an online schedule where we can go to see what streets are next in line?
We definitely have lists that have been passed out. Have we posted that online? We can post that online. We can post it on our social media platforms and on our website.
Okay. great.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
What's going on? Doing well. How are you?
I am Serena Wilson. I'm a citizen of Jackson.
I know you
grew up
are.
in Ward 3. And I have a couple questions. One, where are we on the street lights? Because people are still running the lights are out. So they apparently they don't know how to use it as a four-way stop. Secondly, the
Traffic lights.
Yes. Secondly, when these companies are coming into our neighborhoods and digging up the street for repairs or what have you, they're leaving a mess after the work. So there's holes, and then they come and put gravel, then the gravel is washed out, and then we're back to holes again. Now, they just did paved Northside Drive where they dug up down by the old car wash. But people were going in the opposite direction, almost causing another accident because they're dodging the holes that where these companies dug up or what have you. And that also goes the same with if there's a storm. And I don't know if this falls on Entergy or not, but I know like down north side, right where Lake High Cove is, trees fall all the time and it pulls the power lines down. But when they're coming out there and picking up the debris, they're leaving stuff everywhere. We still have lines hanging, and I know all of them are not Entergy's, but
Well, none of them are ours, but I got you.
well, yeah, but if this is happening in other cities, when they come out there to clean up, you never know that there was a storm that came through. They're leaving a mess in our neighborhoods, and they're not going out and repairing anything. So where are we on that?
So our first goal was to become a part of 311. Is it 311? Is that the number? The 311 system that we were required to become a part of. Are we talking? No, it's not 311. 811. That's why it didn't feel right. The 811 system where they're supposed to communicate and hold them accountable. The utility commission is supposed to hold them accountable when they do those things. I will tell you that the utilities, in that regard, are pretty consistent in their lack of accountability for our road infrastructure, and so that there's a lot to be desired there, and I'm looking to hold them accountable as well. But we did join 811, which we were not a part of, and that had limitations in how we could hold them accountable. But since that point, we have done so, and we're looking to hold them accountable. I can tell you that I think that their most egregious cases are often in Jackson, but I can also share with you I'm a part of the Rankin Hines Levee Board that maintains the levee. We consistently have problems when they drill and, break pipes and do things that they're not supposed to do. So they're, I won't say that they're equal opportunity offenders, but they're consistent in offending everyone, right? And so it's going to be a lot of work to do that. Now, with the traffic signals, first of all, there are a number of things. One, a good portion of our traffic signals were all purchased during a bond referendum, some or leveraging at the same time, more than 30 years ago. And so just as when you have your car and you start getting notifications that you need to extend your warranty, and then all of a sudden when your warranty goes out, your car starts acting up, right? Well, these streetlights have a life cycle too, right? And so now we're chasing behind the age of our streetlights, just like the age of all of our other infrastructure. Traffic lights. Just like we're tracking down the age of our other infrastructure. And we've also had sabotage to take place. We have video of someone, an arsonist, right? Who on Pascagoula, we have video of them burning the box next to the traffic light, sabotaging it. We know that we've had several other boxes that have had electrical damage. Until that time, I don't know that we suspected that it was arson on all of them, or whether we just thought that it was just the age of the traffic signal. And then we have people, and when I say people who are having accidents, running into them consistently, and we have large vehicles, 18-wheelers, that are passing under traffic lights that they are at an insufficient size and carrying them away. And so there are a number of contributing factors. But what we're doing is an emergency, declaring an emergency so that we can have a swift repair to as many as we need to. But what I need to do proactively now that this is another problem that has presented itself, is have a condition assessment of the age and the expected life cycle of each one of our traffic signals so that we can have a better plan of how we're going to address them proactively going forward. But the ones that went out at the same time were because they were all purchased around the same time. And they all got old at the same time. And they started having issues around the same time. Yeah. I like how y'all wait for one person to get done and then the next one comes. Y'all can create a line too, that's fine.
Mayor.
Yes, sir.
2 comments and a question. First comment, I was a zookeeper. I enjoyed it. I would highly recommend it for a career.
Are you interested in coming back?
Sir?
Are you interested in coming back?
I think I'm too old.
What? Yeah.
The second thing is, I would highly recommend another 1% for JPD only, for equipment and for salaries.
Huh. Interesting.
I would be happy to pay my 1%. I guess my question to her is, let me just say this. I live on Normandy Drive. I've lived there for 30 years with my wife. We've raised 3 kids there. Right now, if I look at the houses around me, there are 4 that I know of that are owned by a company in Dayton, Ohio. Most of them are not owned by the residents that live there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, if they buy the houses from out of state, they have no vested interest in being, they don't know what it's like here. Is there any way we can do something to say, okay, if you're not a resident, we don't want you here buying up our property.
Mm-hmm.
There's one example. I've sent an email and I've gotten kind of nasty, I guess, but the old Putt-Putt golf course,
Mm-hmm.
that's owned by somebody in Brandon. It's like, they don't care.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess that's just it. If there's something that could be done so that we limit the people from out of state and out of cities buying up our property.
Yeah. Well, one, I want to have a conversation after, even if we can't get you back as a zookeeper, find out how we can use you to encourage other people to enter into that profession. So let's have that conversation. And help me try to remember each issue that you brought up. The first one was 1%, and a 1% for the police. The reason that I made that sound, I said, interesting, is because one, I do believe that our officers not only do a great job and put their lives on the line in order to fight for our residents, I believe that they need to be compensated for that work. And so, give them a round of applause. And they're doing a great job. I'm very pleased at the job that Chief Wade is doing. We never had a disagreement about, meaning the administration and the council, about raising their salaries. We had a disagreement about how to achieve that. And what we did was we shut down programs that we thought were vital and important, like early childhood development. We had an issue where our children were not doing well, and what we have to understand is one of the challenges that teachers like this lady that came in front of us is that every child that enters her classroom in kindergarten, they're not all starting at the same place. And so it makes it difficult in how you instruct these children when, one person's child had the benefit of going to a pre-K program and getting structured curriculum. And then this other person, and there's no issue with this, my children did this. This other one was with grandma, right? And it was more babysitting in that moment, or with somebody else. And then you have the parents who can't afford either. They can't afford to stay with their kids because they have to work to make a living to take care of them. And you have the ones, who can't afford to pay for the formal programs that happen. And so I thought that was important, and I do think that we'll see the consequences of that decision long term. What we suggested, and you said, I'd be willing to pay another penny in order to support our police department. What we looked at was doing adding on to our ad valorem taxes or our property taxes, 2 meals. What does that mean? Because it's important that you know how much that costs, right? 2 meals is the equivalent of $20 annually per $100,000 value of your home. Most homes are $100,000 or less. So we weren't asking for $20 a week. We weren't asking for $20 a month. We were asking for $20 a year to support not only our police department, but it would have given us the money to support our fire department as well, right? And so what's interesting about that debate is we're saying that it's too expensive at that time. It's too expensive for residents to pay $20 a year, while at the same time, we're trying to give them a garbage contract that costs $13 million more, that they're going to pay more than $20 more on their garbage bill, possibly, if you go with that contract, every month. So how is $20 a year too expensive for police protection to support and show our officers dignity in their jobs, but somehow $20 extra for the garbage company that you just so desperately want to be there, right? That makes no sense. The math ain't mathing on that. That's a problem. And so I think that that's a conversation because I know that they want to be competitive in the market. I know that some council members, and let me be clear, I have found Councilman Grizel's voting history on this to be pretty solid on this. So I'm going to give you pretty solid, all right? That's strong for me, right? But I think that as we look at being competitive in the market, that we're going to have to revisit those questions, as well as look at other investments in the public safety front. So one of the things that we said, listen, and Chief Wade, correct me when I'm wrong. There are a few things that you need to know. The overwhelming majority of our violence that we see in the city of Jackson is interpersonal. It's family members killing family members. It's people, friends who get in a dispute, killing friends. The victim knows their attacker in the overwhelming majority of our cases. The murder that we had this weekend was in a hotel room, right? Amongst people who knew each other, right? And so it's almost impossible to police that, right? The police can't have some instinct that they know to be in your home, and we're certainly not going to knock on everybody's door and say, y'all good in here today? Ain't no beef, ain't no problems going on. And so that means that we have to make other investments so that people know how to do conflict resolution, so that people don't make permanent decisions for temporary problems. And so we have gotten money from Wells Fargo and the National League of Cities that has given us seed money that has allowed us to create the Office of Violence Prevention and Trauma Recovery. And what we're trying to do is hire social workers and mental health professionals so that we're not acting like a carpenter with one tool, a hammer, so everything looks like a nail. And so we're trying to address it with the appropriate measured response to the challenge that we're seeing. And that means supporting, paying, giving the resources that our police department need to do their jobs, and it means supporting programs that help deal with the other challenges. Did he have another question? I did. Okay, I'm just trying to make sure I addressed all of the things you asked. Oh, the property. So there's one thing that we did do and one thing that we're asking that you support that we're trying to do and have been trying to do for a while. One, we were able to do an assessment of everyone living in Jackson. And what we found is that we have slightly more renters in Jackson than we have property owners. And so when we're trying to hold people accountable with things like code enforcement, we were unable to really have impact because there's actually the majority of our community that wasn't being tracked because they were renters, right? And so we created a rental registry, which requires everyone who rents out property to have someone registered with the city so that we have someone to communicate and an ability to hold them accountable for the condition of their property. The other thing that we have asked for is a land bank. Now, a land bank ensures that you don't penalize poverty, but at the same time, it gives residents and community more say-so in what happens in their community. I was born in Detroit. I told y'all I've been in Jackson since I was 5, but I was born in Detroit and I have a lot of family in Detroit. Many of you know when Detroit went bankrupt. If you visited Detroit around that time, you would have saw a city that not only had a lot of dilapidated buildings, that had dark streets because they as a city couldn't even afford to pay. They couldn't pay in certain areas. They just didn't have the money to do that. Detroit today isn't the city that it was when it went into bankruptcy. And the vehicle that they used, the tool that they used, was land bank. And so when I go to conferences and I'm meeting with other mayors, this is an issue that we all deal with and we all cross. And the ones that have been most successful are those that have land banks that help support them. And so the fortunate thing is that we've gained allies in this process. We've been doing this, almost every year since we've been in office, at the very least 6 years. And so what we were able to do one year is we were able to get it passed through the House of Representatives nearly unanimously, and it was never presented on the floor of the Senate. It never saw the light of day. And so at that time, the Secretary of State told me that he didn't think it was necessary, that we could just use something like eminent domain, as if that is a real vehicle that you can go to each individual house that is abandoned to deal with. And then also, when you're asking if there's some way that we can say, we don't want you to buy these properties if you don't live here, understand that these abandoned properties that many of you asked me about, the city of Jackson doesn't own the grand majority of them. The state of Mississippi does, because most of those homes are taken for a failure to pay taxes. And so the state acquires that property, and then the state has this, essentially this auction where they sell the property to get tax dollars off of it. And it allows companies to speculate. It allows somebody who isn't going to live in that community, has no desire to live in that home, to purchase that home at rock bottom price. And, he doesn't have to, or he or she doesn't have to care about the condition of the property because they don't have to live there and they took very limited risk in buying it. And so we have to come up with a better plan, some more appropriate legislation that addresses the issue that we have. Y'all see, I'm not running away, but y'all gonna. But I'm voluntold by them what to do every day.
I'm gonna try to be brief.
You're fine.
My question is, has it ever been any conversation about toll roads and those kind of things? Because you see, if you at the interstate, you see thousands of cars flying in every morning and they go out every afternoon.
Yeah.
There has to be something that they can have some responsibility to the city that they come and get our resources out, their salaries, and then take it back to other communities.
Yeah. Well, I tell everybody that Jackson is not a city that has a problem producing wealth. It's a city that has a problem maintaining wealth. And all of the money that's made between 9 and 5 just happens to be out by 6, right? So yes, there has been discussion about toll roads, about, a commuter tax, those things. But that is governed because that is interlocal travel. So we can't put up a toll road. We have to get state authority and a permission in order to put a toll road because it dictates the interlocal travel between city to city, and that is a state function. The problem with that is that you're asking many of the people who would be paying that tax to tax themselves. They're the ones that are coming in and out, right? And so they don't have a lot of incentive to tax themselves. Now, I will share with you that there is a long-standing project that has been tried, that is trying to be pushed, where it will create a bridge that goes at the end of High Street, right where High Street ends, right up to the levee, right near Heron Gear. The reason that that street ends right there is because there's supposed to be a bridge that goes all the way across the Pearl and connects to the airport. It connects in Flowood, and it would be an airport parkway, an airport parkway. And so we've gone to Washington on a mega grant, and part of the funding, we know that a toll road can't fund that exclusively, but when you're talking about the amount or the percentage of funds that the cities would have to contribute, it could help offset that. And so that has been a part of the conversation. Now, we haven't been approved for that yet. There's only about 5 to 10 cities each year that are approved or less for a mega grant like that. But we're trying to do that project, and that might be the most likely area to see a toll road if that project was done. I want to thank y'all for being here, giving me not only the opportunity, but the mic. I know that my directors are like, why am I here if I didn't get to speak? But I never know what the questions might be, Chief Wade. And I want to make sure that y'all are here. But I also believe that we all need to be informed in what's going on with our city. I invite more questions. I'll tell you that there's a segment that we've started called Ask Antar, where you can go on the city's website, you can go on social media. If somebody was just too shy to ask their question today, then I ask that you go and submit your question, because what your question may be the question that someone else has. And we want to make sure that you're armed with proper information. I appreciate y'all and pray that y'all have a blessed night. All right, thank you.
We're about to let you go. We just want to first again say thank you to our mayor and the City of Jackson staff that have come out in attendance. But we want to give you a few notes to take with you. You heard the mayor talk about making sure that we buy Jackson and that we buy online in order to help increase the tax base here. And we want to make sure that we report all issues that you have to the mayor's action line or 311 system. And if you don't know that number, it is 601-960-1111, 601-960-1111. And while we're on that note, the administration was successful in working with the city council on last week to get our 311 app back online. Well, we're working to get it back online, but we got the approval for payment for the 311 app on last Tuesday. So you'll hear more about that, and that's the app that some of you may be familiar with, where you can report some of the issues that you brought to the mayor tonight online or from your cell phone. And we want to remind you that JPD, Jackson Police Department, is hiring. The age is 21 years of age. Jackson Fire Department is hiring. The age is 18 years of age. And with that being said, again, we thank you. If you have any questions for me or my staff, please call us at the 960-1111 number. Thank you.